Hey everybody, sorry I'm a couple minutes late tonight, but wanted to hit you guys up with tip number three. So this is Coach Jose, and we've been working on firing up your focus. So again, this is tip number three, and if you're out there and you're watching, please let me know you're out there. Show me some love, hit me up. Have any questions at any point during this, please feel free to ask. So we'll give it a couple seconds, see if anybody pops up here. It's Thanksgiving time. Okay, where are we at? All right, well, I'm just going to go ahead and get rolling, and if anybody joins me, fantastic. And if not, hopefully you guys catch this on the replay. So, tip number three is food for thought. Okay, food for thought. I'm sure that you have probably seen the candy bar commercial. Hi, Carol. Good to see you. You've seen that candy bar commercial. Right? I'm not going to mention the name because, I'm not getting any royalties for this. But it's usually a bunch of people sitting around doing something, and then there's one person that is really acting kind of odd, and it's played by a celebrity who's noted for being kind of an odd or obnoxious character. One of the people says, "Hey, are you okay? Are you hungry?" And he said, "You're not you when you're hungry." And they give them the candy bar, and they eat the candy bar, and they turn into their old self. Well, there's a lot of truth to that commercial. And it has to do with our digestive system. And this is kind of a cool thing, and it's not one that a lot of people think about, right, in terms of how our digestive system affects our mental well-being. Okay. You see, our digestive system is considered actually to be our second brain. And there's a whole branch, a new branch of specialization that studies the connection, this phenomenon, and it's called neurogastroenterology. Right? So, what they found is that the guts, which basically considering the entire digestive system, so everything from the esophagus down to the rectum is part of what they call the enteric nervous system, or the ENS for short, right? And the ENS, depending on who you ask, is made up of at least 100 million neurons to up to 500 million neurons. So that's a pretty big difference. Whereas the brain has estimated a little bit less than 100 billion. So it doesn't have as many as the brain up here, but it still has quite a few, because the spinal cord, for example, only has 100 million neurons. So there are a lot of neurons in this system, right? And the way that the neurons communicate with each other, whether it be up here or whether it be the neurons that exist in your ENS, they communicate with each other through neurotransmitters. So neurotransmitters are basically chemical compounds that are released, from the end of one neuron connects to the other, and it relays the information, right? Transmits the information, right? And there are as many neurotransmitters in the ENS, in the gut, as there are in our brain, which is some pretty amazing stuff. In his book, The Second Brain, Dr. Michael Gershon, he states how researchers are finding more evidence that problems in the gastrointestinal system are sending signals to our brain which trigger mood changes. And that might explain why people that have digestive problems suffer from depression and anxiety more than the average person. We've always been led to believe that our state of mind affected our stomach. So like if you're really nervous and you're stressed and you're tense, then you start to get problems with your stomach, and you have digestive problems like irritable bowel syndrome and things like that. Well, what the research is showing is that it can often be the opposite. The reason that we have anxiety is because there's actually problems in our ENS, which is then sending signals to our brain, and then our brain is responding to that, right? So when we're thinking about how to improve our focus and mental well-being, we need to consider our stomach as much as we do our head. For example, there's a neurotransmitter that exists, and it's called gamma aminobutyric acid, or GABA for short. Right. And the GABA neurotransmitter connects the portions of our brain that control our motor movement, our vision, and they also regulate our anxiety. So it's considered to be an inhibitor, a feel-good compound. Right? And a GABA deficiency can really mess with your head. Right? It can create a lot of stress, anxiety, and mental issues. Right, and the thing is there are GABA neurotransmitters and receptors in our gut as well. So it's not just up here; it's down here as well. And research is finding that fermented foods, things like dill pickles, sauerkraut, yogurt, they have healthy bacteria in them, which are called probiotics. And the probiotics work within the stomach, and they help to the body to increase the GABA levels. I've always heard about the importance of probiotics, and I take some probiotics as a means to keep you regular, right? So to help with the digestion process. But research is now showing that it can actually helps keep your mind regular as well. It can help to keep your mind, focused and calm, right? So to keep our mind sharp and focused, we do need to pay attention to our stomachs as well. So pretty much everybody has heard this saying that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, right? But when it comes to improving our performance, whether it be at school or at work, it may literally be the missing link. Kids will often bypass breakfast in exchange for a few extra minutes of sleep, and some adults do the same thing. Weight-conscious adults might skip breakfast because you get up and you go, I'm really not that hungry, and if I skip breakfast, then I can save myself X amount of calories for the day. Right? Neither one of those is a good reason. They're not a good choice if you need to perform at a high mental level. So a good balanced breakfast, it not only gives you fuel for your body, because that's the way most people think about it. You eat a good breakfast and you got enough energy to do what you've got to do during the day. But it also fuels the mind. Right? So we have to be careful about what we eat. So eating first thing in the morning is a great thing to help jumpstart your brain. But we have to be careful about the quantity, right? Because a lot of people will overeat at breakfast, just really stock up on the calories first thing in the morning. So how sometimes you eat a big meal and you lose energy and focus. And if you don't know what that feels like, wait until Thursday. You will know. And the reason we do that is because our body is sending resources to our stomach to process all that goodness that we've put into nutrition for our bodies and our brain. So when we overload it, we create this backlog. So these, it's like all hands on deck. Let's deal with processing this food, and then we can go back to our other activities. So by overeating, you actually then take your resources away from your brain. Right? So moderation is the key. Right? What's the right amount? Well, I can't tell you that. You need to figure that out for yourself because everybody's different. Their metabolisms are different. But so what are some good things that you can eat to help to improve your focus? Caffeine, right? So a lot of people say caffeine's bad for you. Some people say it's good for you. Well, caffeine does help to fire up your focus a little bit, as well as sugar, right? Glucose is your brain's preferred fuel source, right? But with both caffeine and sugar, you have to be very, very careful. It will give you a quick spike. So you need that immediate rush of energy to your brain. Those two will do it right away. But they also cause a crash, right? So caffeine and sugar do help with focus, but you have to be careful not to overdo it. With sugar especially, because too much can actually diminish your memory, and too much not only diminishes your memory, but it can also increase your waist size. fish. Right? People always say fish is brain food. Right? So fish is high in omega-3s, and we've heard about how that's so good for us. But fish like halibut and mackerel, they also have GABA in it. So that's our old friend. We go back to that. Also speaking of GABAs, yogurt. Right? We mentioned that earlier. Fermented foods like kimchi and sauerkraut, nuts, avocados, whole grains, blueberries. These are all things that can help to stabilize blood sugar a little bit. And by stabilizing the blood sugar, the glucose is what we need for our brain's process, and then also keep our energy consistent throughout the day. Okay. Then there's another component, and that's that we always have to keep in mind. We need to monitor our water intake. Our brains depend on proper hydration to function optimally. Your brain's composed of 73% water, and your brain cells lose efficiency when the water level drops. So research has found that when we're in need of water, and keep in mind that a rule of thumb is that if you feel thirsty, you're already entering into a dehydration state. So if your research is finding that when you're in need of water, when you feel, wow, I really have to have a drink, that we have more difficulty keeping our attention focused. And that dehydration can impair short-term memory and the recall of long-term memory. And it also affects our mood. And research has also indicated that when you're thirsty, and when you have that feeling, I really need to drink, your brain function can drop as much as 14%. And the reason it drops is because your brain is busy processing, how am I going to get water? And once that need is fulfilled, then the resources can go back out to doing what other kind of processing you need to do. So just by drinking, you can prevent that 14% decrease. There's also a study that was done with school children in England that showed that children who drank water prior to a test, like a seated exam, scored up to 30% better than those who didn't drink, right? So those who were kind of in a state of dehydration. And that's a good question, Carol. I'll have to do a lot more research on that one. So anyway, to sum it up, to make sure your brain is ready to perform at its peak, first, make sure you give it proper fuel. Okay? 2, give it plenty of water. And 3, make sure you listen to your gut. Okay, so I hope that you enjoyed this tip on how to improve your focus. These are really easy to implement, right? Make sure you're eating the right stuff, eating the right time. Right? Don't skip those meals, especially before a very thought-intensive process. But be careful not to overeat. Keep drinking that water, and come back next week and join me for tip number 4. And if you enjoyed this, please make sure you give me some likes, and also make sure you share this with people. Right? This is some really cool information, and if it can help you, it can help someone else. So please make sure you share this with someone. All right, it's Coach Jose. I'm out. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.